Can I have roll call, please?
Yes. Director Kildorf.
Here.
Director Montero. Here. Director Salmon. Here. Inglewood, not present. Director Suarez.
Here.
Puff. Here. Carney.
Here.
Harriscam. Here. Under B. Not present. Stigura.
Here.
Kaji. Here. Allen. Here. Here is not here yet. Okay, we have a quorum.
Okay, any public comments? We on Zoom, any emails?
Nope.
Anybody here for public comment? Anybody here for public comment? All right. All right, is there a motion to approve the consent calendar?
So move. Second.
Good luck, David.
Montero. In a second by Uphoff.
Do we need a roll call, Lauren?
Yes.
I saw you do that about.
We don't have anybody online yet.
Not yet.
So I can do a reverse.
You can do.
Any opposition? Any abstentions? Okay, motion passes. Thank you.
Can I just say that the minutes this time were very, very long? And so Chair and I discussed this, and unless I guess somebody finds these helpful, we're going to try to make them much, much shorter. But I thought for the first meeting, we could keep them long.
Before we start, Michelle is here now, so we need to do a 707.
Hi, Michelle. Thank you for joining us.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes. Okay, so we just want to report that board member Ramirez is traveling on official business, and so she is allowed to teleconference into the meeting under AB 707. Can you, well, you're not in a room, but can you confirm if there's anyone over 18 with you in the area?
I'm actually in the hotel lobby and there's nobody here. So do you need me to show you?
No, that's okay. Will you just
Okay.
have to keep your video camera on?
Oh
the
yeah,
whole time
absolutely.
meeting, and so if you need to take a break or you need to take a recess, please let us know and we can accommodate that. Thank you.
Not a problem.
Thanks. And before we get started, also, those of us who are already delegates to Chicago, well trained by Natalie to respond to the request for the meeting to RSVP, so we know that we have a quorum. So the Housing Trust is a new board in some respects, so I just want to make sure that when we get those emails, we respond right away so that we know that we're going to have a meeting. And that way Natalie doesn't have to do her thing and text us and hunt us down. Yeah, yeah. So anyway, going forward, I promise Natalie, I'll respond right away to the RSVP request. Right, discussion items number 6A, direction for accounting and procurement policies and procedures. Jackie.
Get these page number for you. 6A is on page 30, starts on page 34. And what happened was we were going to come to you this month with some accounting policies and procurement policies. But there are really some issues that are important as far as what you want this age, how you want this agency to operate. And I thought we ought to get some direction from you. And on page 34, you can see we have questions like how many signatures you think should be on checks, who should sign them, what the signature authority should be for one signature or two, how we want to improve expenses of the board. Do you want a subcommittee? Do you want, how do you want to handle this? And when we have large contracts, RFPs, how do we do that? So I guess I was asking, we have all these questions on page 34 and 35, and I wanted to see if we could get those answers. So that's this item.
So does anybody want to add anything to this list of questions? About these are the draft, I think that's in the hot link in the agenda packet is what South Bay Cog does, but there are some questions as to how we're going to go forward for the trust. And we can do this one of two ways. We can hash every question out now at the meeting, or we can appoint a subcommittee. to go through and make recommendations at the June meeting of how we should, what the policies and procedures for the South Bay Trust are going forward for finance. What's your
For the latter.
preference? Subcommittee,
Subcommittee.
okay, volunteers,
Sure.
Bernadette, Bill. I'll volunteer as well. Anybody else? It would help if somebody has city finance experience too. Okay. All
We
right,
have 3 members.
so we'll take that under submission and report back in June, although I will be at the June meeting and John will be handling it. Is that good?
Yeah.
All right,
I have Bernadette Suarez, Bill Uphoff, and Store.
okay. Okay, anything else on that? IB update to SB 799 letter to support, David?
Yes, so we actually heard back from Senator. Thank you. We heard back from Senator Allen's office earlier today. The bill without the moderate income component is expected to be heard in local government on June 17th. And we would like to have hopefully a board volunteer to go up to Sacramento and testify to the committee. Maybe I would go with them, I don't know, we'll talk about that later. And then a supplemental one at a date still to be determined for the housing, Senate, Assembly Housing Committee. There seems to be a little bit of pushback on including the moderate income component right now. We're going to send some details and data points up to Senator Allen's staff to hopefully make the case. I think there's just this perception that we're trying to somehow circumvent everything else about the lower affordability levels. They want to put guardrails on like the percentage of moderate income programs we could do. At the end of the day, in our eye, at least Jackie and my eyes, the funding sources for all of the programs will dictate what kinds of projects we can fund. So there's no way to force Measure A dollars to fund a moderate income or not. If this funding source doesn't allow for it, it doesn't allow for it. And we just want the ability to do that if we find a funding source that will do that. And so putting constraints on the programs before we even know what they are, how much of our overall trust program of those would be, just doesn't make sense to us to agree to at this point. And so I think we're going to try and push back pretty hard on any restrictions right now. And so I think the more support we get from not only our cities, but from outside folks, the Air Force Base and the WIB and all those other kind of stakeholders, I think will be helpful. But we can't ask for that support yet because those amendments haven't been introduced. And so they don't want us to send up support letters for something that isn't in writing yet. And so we're sort of stuck, I think, in a little bit of a hard place right now on the moderate income side of things. But we do know that at least right now, it looks like the June 17th local government committee hearing is kind of set. So
The fact they would use the word guardrails is an interesting, it's interesting. I mean, that we're a government agency that's been, you've all voluntarily joined and now they have the desire to put guardrails on what we can do. It's, I wanted to just, I know there's some questions, but I wanted you to tell what they've asked for. I mean, we need to ask our cities for some specific information. And I think that's important that if you can go back and ask your city for this information.
yeah, and I think some of this we might have in the housing needs assessment that Adam and his team put together, but she was asking for data to back the argument, including a disproportionate percentage of commuters, so daytime versus nighttime population, median income relative to median rental and housing cost, as granular as we can get. So we had given them kind of the county level when we first kind of started to make the case for this, since most stuff is kind of calculated at the county level. But I think they're looking for South Bay specific data. And some of that I think we have in the housing needs assessment, but anything your cities have that can help specifically address those kind of questions, I think would be helpful for us to kind of compile a fact sheet or argument for South Bay specific stuff.
So let me ask you a question. When we met with Assemblywoman Tina McKinnon, right? She we brought up this whole moderate housing and she kind of flipped the noodle, right? Oh, I can't support anything moderate housing, right? But then we said, hey, well, this, realistically, if you're looking at first time buyers and that type of thing, she was receptive to it. So is there an opportunity to rephrase or recharacterize? I mean, I think moderate housing is they're just say no, right? But when, like I said, first time home buyers, she supported that. So again, maybe there's a messaging opportunity.
The way we described it was workforce housing. So I think we've tried to address that already. I think the bigger issue is that the opposition is coming from the committee staff, not the elected officials themselves.
You're not even getting to the elected officials. That's the problem. You can't even get to the elected.
Right.
officials.
There we go.
Paige, go ahead.
I just came from the South Bay Aerospace Alliance meeting as well, and they do have data, and this impacts military housing specifically as well. And that's a huge challenge for the Air Force Base right now. And they do have data about, I think some of the granular things that you were talking about for, miles traveled and income levels. Wonder if it would be beneficial to have a commander or someone go speak on that. I'm happy to advocate for that. I don't know that I am available to go to Sacramento, but I can check. But I think that would help because aerospace is a huge thing for the state as far as income and, federal government. So I think playing that card as opposed to just workforce housing, but military housing and aerospace.
Adam.
Just wanted to add, when you get to the point where you're ready to talk about the moderate income, our work with the West Side cities, council of governments, they are forming a trust, and by August, they'll have a new trust, just like you just started yours. And our work with them to help form that trust, they are aware that you are looking at trying to propose legislation with Senator Allen. Senator Allen covers their territory largely as well, and they would like to join you in any advocacy to help support that.
So I guess we're gonna just wait until,
Yeah, if anybody wants to look at their calendars afterwards and let me know if you're available to potentially go up on the 17th, we can then coordinate.
listen, as far as letters go,
17th. And then as far as letters go,
no draft.
no, we have something, but I don't want to send out something I'd rather fine tune it based on what we actually will see.
And if we have data,
I think that Mike's off, but
and if we have data,
yes,
send it to you.
yeah, if you're community development folks or whoever might have that kind of data.
But based on the calendar, the legislative calendar, it's gonna hit the local government committee and all the deadlines. I mean, do we have any? Do we know what that means? It's almost August by the time it gets there.
That's all I have. But this is a gut and amend bill, so I think it travels on a separate path than regular bills have, but that's as much information as I was able to get from his team.
Anything further on that? Okay, I did not ask whether there have been any changes to the agenda. And are we still considering the bank? Because I have that as C.
Yes. Yeah, it's okay.
Okay, is it not on there? Okay. No. Okay, so I have as agenda item 5C. Oh, that was on consent. Okay, good. Okay, all right. So then 6C is reviewing the CASA guidelines for projects, and that's Bronson.
Thanks, everyone. Just wanted to tee up the next hour. It's gonna be action packed. We're gonna first talk it's gonna accumulate in you either approving or not approving a Hawthorne project that we will bring forth to you all. But before we do that, we wanted to kind of just reset with you all our LACASA guidelines that will govern this project. And Kevin walk you just a quick reminder of what we need to do in order to fulfill our guideline requirements with LACASA. Kevin, you want to take it away?
Yeah, thanks, Ronson. Good afternoon, members of the board. Apologies I'm not there in person, just recovering from a little cold, but as Ronson said, we're going to be covering a brief overview of the PPO guidelines for this fiscal year. And I will preface by saying that while the LACASA board approved to update the guidelines in their April meeting, Those won't go in effect until the new year, and as we get closer to the new fiscal year, we'll be sure to provide an overview of that one as well. But on to the next slide. And just to set the stage, just wanted to remind you all of all the funding, the amount of money that we're working with, just over $7.3 million. As you can see in the columns there, they're split between PPO new construction, which is what it is. It's for the allocation of funding for the construction of new affordable housing, and rent and operating subsidies that support new construction of affordable housing. And then for PPO flexible, we can continue to fund new construction, but that also includes preservation and ownership activities. I also wanted to note that of the $7.3 million, we can also fund legal financing and consultant services. Under the La Casa guidelines, those are classified as activity delivery costs. These are direct expenses related to the implementation of the PPO guidelines. And then also would like to note that each eligible jurisdiction like us, the funds, once they have been allocated, they must be obligated within 1 year of that allocation. Specifically for projects like later today, hopefully you all approve the Hawthorne Abode project. Once those funds have been obligated, they must be spent within 3 years. And La Casa staff can extend that window, but if they deem necessary. And moving on to the next slide. So here are all the eligible PPO products in the guidelines. Today, we're really only going to talk about the direct project investment because that is the focus of today's board meeting. This is the product that we will be participating in. Hopefully, you all recommend or vote to approve the Hawthorne Abode project. So we just wanted to provide an overview of the requirements of that product specifically today. The next slide. Starting with some of the statutory requirements that we must follow. First with the allocation requirements, I kind of touched upon it earlier at the beginning of the presentation, but specifically 77.25% of our allocation must be spent on the construction of new affordable housing or rent and operating subsidies that support new construction. And then the rest is the PPO flexible, which can continue for new construction, and then the other ownership and preservation activities that are listed right here in the table. And then on the right, all of the PPO construction and rehabilitation projects must provide prevailing wages. And if we are dealing with a project that is 40 units or greater, they must follow additional requirements. If you're within the city of Los Angeles, you'll see they must comply with the project labor agreement. And then if for the rest of LA County, you must comply with the community workforce agreement. Later we'll obviously talk more about the Abode project, but that is greater than 40 units and they are, following the required prevailing wage requirements.
Actually, just to clarify, it's actually not just the city of LA. We have to abide by the city of LA's project labor agreement, even if we're not in the city of LA. So I just want to make that clarification.
Yeah, thank you, Roxy. Next slide.
Why is that?
It's just part of the Measure A language statutory. Five units.
And then this is the last slide of this overview. We're going to finish it off with our affordability requirements. For new construction, there's kind of two options that we can participate in. One is we can fund 100% affordable housing projects. That is projects with units at or below 80% of the area median income, like the Hawthorne Abode project. And then we can also fund projects that have at least 50 units or 50% of the total units, whichever is greater, in a larger development that includes units targeted up to 120% of the area median income. And that was the mouthful, but essentially mixed income housing. And then on the right, you'll see that we must also follow this portfolio requirement set in stone in the guidelines. And in eligible jurisdictions, Measure A funded units must meet these following requirements over any 2-year period. So any projects, our portfolio over a 2-year period must include at least 25% of units reserved for at or below 30% of the area median income. That's extremely low income. and they must also be reserved for at least 25% of units reserved at or below 50% AMI. And that's very low income. And then, of course, this is monitored by La Casa themselves and then the Citizens Oversight Committee. And I believe that's it for the portion of my slides, Ronson. I guess we can do questions, or you can go to your.
Any questions on that? Bill?
Yeah, just how does this influence or not influence? I mean, if we have to follow this, how does that play into what we're trying to get the state to pass?
Well, yeah, so I mean, I think David kind of mentioned this, like our funding sources dictate what we can build, right? So, and this funding source, we can only build 50%. Well, we can do 80% AMI, which is low income. And then 50% of our portfolio has to be at very low income. So that dictates that. What we're trying to do with the state, though, is to allow us to accept funding sources that might include moderate.
Outside funding sources.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Yeah, and is this also for the PPO flexible? Is that applicable?
Well, PPO flexible, yes, we can use it for this. PPO flexible also allows us to use those funds for rehabilitation and preserving affordable housing. We can also use PPO flexible for ownership products, which are different products that we're not going to be discussing today, but we could also use those funds for those purposes. Now, keep in mind, what we're talking about today is fiscal year 25-26 funds. So these are funds that are due, come in a couple months. And so we're trying to obligate our funds before the year is out, and then we have 3 years to spend it. So that's the goal of today. Okay, so David, if you can go start on the, okay, you can skip this one.
Okay. Ronson, we're not ready for Hawthorne yet. The next item is grants item.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, okay, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to build on a little bit of what Ronson was talking about looking at possible trust programs. This is really more looking ahead to the 26, 27 and future funding streams, not necessarily, the 25, 26, which needs to be obligated, in a pretty big hurry at this point. So we're gonna be looking at, kind of what the trust can do, in the future, later this year, next year, future years. So there we go. Okay, I'm going to break this up into kind of two segments. First, talking about rental products. So how can the trust help fund rental affordable housing? And then second, look at how the trust can fund ownership affordable housing. And so I would be interested in hearing the board's feedback, kind of hearing what everybody here thinks, the best products going forward for the trust to offer, either today or sometime in the future, if you want to sit here and think about it, or both. So first, talking about affordable rental housing is residual receipt soft loans. So this is what's being proposed for the Hawthorne project that you'll be hearing about next. And this is the most common type of funding for trusts and for cities and basically for most local government to offer to affordable housing developers. And it's a loan that goes to the project and gets paid back when the project has excess funding in order to pay it back. And this is largely what I talked about at our last meeting. Typically, these loans are a few $1 million up to $5 million, generally. If there's more money, they can be bigger than that. But, kind of looking at what we expect the trust to have, $5 million for one project kind of wipes the trust out for most of a year. And the terms are 55 years at typically 3% simple interest. And like I said, they are paid back as funding is available. The second option would be an acquisition and pre-development loan program. So these loans go into a project right kind of as the project is getting off the ground, when they are purchasing land or when they're doing all of their entitlements and financing applications, the architectural design, and it helps pay for all of those costs that go into a project before tax credits are awarded, before cities bring their money in, kind of right at the very beginning. And they're really helpful for areas where there aren't a lot of projects kind of waiting in the wings for funding. It's where you need to build a pipeline and initiate some new projects. Typically, these are smaller loans. They're between $750,000 and $2.5 million. So that means the trusts can make more of them, and they also get paid back more quickly. Typically, we see them paid back within about 3 years, and they get paid back when the project starts construction. And that means that the trust can recycle the money more quickly, get it out to more projects, get more projects started, which, if there aren't a lot of projects, already initiated, is a good thing. And the interest rate on these vary, but it's typically higher than 3% simple. It's closer to a market rate interest rate, but less than market. So we have a competitive advantage. There are acquisition and pre-development loan programs out there from CDFIs and other lenders, but they tend to be incredibly expensive. So this can help get a project going, at a little bit cheaper price. Next, we have preservation loans. Now, the first two products, all of the La Casa funds can go towards. Preservation loans can only be funded with the PPO Flex dollars or other non-La Casa dollars, but the PPO new construction cannot go to a preservation loan. And generally, there are two types of preservation loans, either to preserve existing deed-restricted affordable housing, where the deed restrictions are at risk of going away, or to purchase naturally occurring affordable housing and putting deed restrictions on them so that market forces don't force those, less expensive market rate units to become more expensive. And really, typically these work exactly like the residual or receipt soft loan as far as their timing, their loan amounts, their interest rates, all of those sorts of things. And then finally, I think finally on the affordable side is the accessory dwelling units. This kind of splits the difference between ownership and rental. And so it is a loan made to a homeowner to build an accessory dwelling unit that they then rent to an affordable tenant. These loans tend to be very small, $50,000 to $150,000. The state has a program for this that is incredibly popular. When they have money for this program, that money gets allocated within 24 hours, maybe. It is, people love these loans. And the loan terms are shorter, between 5 and 15 years. And then there's a whole variety of ways that either loans are repaid or forgiven, depending on how the board would want to structure, such a loan. But the biggest challenge here is that the trust would be making loans to individual homeowners, and that's a very time and just resource intensive process. And the trust would have to meet all of the mortgage lending requirements that any bank would have to meet when making a loan to a regular homeowner. A lot of those things when we are making loans to an affordable housing developer, they're a sophisticated borrower. They know what they're doing. We can't rely on that with a homeowner. So that is the rental side of things. Now on the home ownership programs.
Can I just ask a question before you get that?
Absolutely.
So the ADU, the loan, there's a covenant on it for how long?
It's really up to the trust on how long it would want.
Michelle had her hand up.
Who would run compliance on that? Would it also have to be the trust?
Yes.
What happens if the homeowner sells the property? Does the new homeowner?
It can be structured in either as the rental restrictions remain on the home, or that the trust gets paid back upon sale. Kind of either way is possible. Again, it's whatever the trust would want to do.
Thank you.
So for the trust to originate and service loans, is the trust is required to do that in-house?
No,
Okay,
you can absolutely hire, somebody to do that for the trust. So far, we haven't seen that successfully happen yet. Either way, we have not seen a trust run an ADU loan program yet. The state does it. They service their own loans. They have that sophistication to do that, but the trust could go out and find a partner in order to do all of that.
Like a commercial lender?
Yes, or there's some nonprofits that actually have mortgage licensing, like NeighborWorks. They would be an eligible partner with you, a nonprofit that also does HUD counseling and everything else. We've talked to some of them. They're open for that idea, but commercial lender would be somebody you could work with. But you'd go out with a proposal and see who would be your partner on that. Do all the heavy lifting.
Right, thank you.
Is the 50 to 150K based on the state existing program?
Yeah, partly, yes. There have been some city programs that have also been in that range. And really it's looking at what the cost is to build an ADU. We don't want to give a homeowner all the money they need, but we want to give them a substantial amount to make it so it's worth it for them to rent it to a lower income household.
50,000 might be a garage conversion ADU. And then on the 150, that might be a whole new construction in the backyard detached.
I was just trying to open our permit system and also going to see the average price or cost valuation today. It's probably 3 to 4 times this amount.
And we're not trying to subsidize and pay for the whole thing.
Right.
We're looking at how much can go into that then makes it economic sense for them to either get a loan, like an equity loan on their home, or they have the cash to fill the difference.
And I am just curious, when that state pot of money is available, what interest does the state charge?
I don't know off the top of my head. I would have to research that. I'll get back to you on it.
Competitive. And I just as an aside, the City of Rolling Hills Estates offers pre-approved plans for ADUs. You still have to do the site work and everything and pay for that, but the plans are already done. And sometimes people will hire people to do that, but we'll give them out over the counter.
And that's a great thing that the city offers to make that easier for homeowners. Certainly seen that in other cities as well. And I know HCD was pushing that on a number of cities when they were updating their housing elements.
Okay.
Grant mentioned this, and I think it's worth repeating just to frame the first two programs that he brought up on the rental side. You have a acquisition pre-development loan option that's a very short revolving loan. And Grant mentioned this, I'll say it again, that's really helpful to build a pipeline. If you need more projects in the region to come to fruition, your cities want to meet their housing goals and they need to attract developers there, that's one way of doing it. As Grant mentioned, there are acquisition pre-development loan programs that are out there with CDFIs or other community financing groups. This is an effort to try to just bring it in a little bit less than cost. And it doesn't require the trust to do the heavy lifting on that loan either. You can partner with a CDFI and they can do all that heavy lifting and you just partner with them and maybe they match some of your funding. We're working on that right now. But if you already have a pipeline of projects, your communities already have identified a developer with a site they've secured, they want to move forward, then you're really looking at the construction permanent financing, the residual receipt loan. That's a longer term loan. And if you talk to any of the affordable housing developers, they'll tell you that's the one that's really the important one because it's a long-term subsidy that they need. They can probably go get the acquisition pre-development loan if they need to. So when you're limited on funding, the development community really to make their projects get to the finish line love the residual receipt longer term loan for construction and permanent financing.
All right, so moving on to the homeownership programs. The homeownership programs are, I would say, difficult but not impossible to use the PPO new construction dollars with. So I would think about this as more a smaller program that is only using PPO flex dollars or other sources of funding that can go into homeownership programs. And a good example of that would be PLHA funding, which some of that money has to be used for homeownership programs. So I would not think of these as the trust's primary program, more as a secondary, smaller program. And that's solely based on timing. There's not that many new construction for sale homes being built in the region where you can use the LaCosta's new construction dollars. But like I said, it is not impossible to use those dollars here. So first is for down payment assistance programs. These serve as a second mortgage to people, and it enables them to have a smaller first mortgage. Instead of having maybe a 3% down payment using an FHA loan, we could provide them a second mortgage that would bring up their down payment to like 20%, making it so they borrow less from their bank and therefore lowering their cost of housing. There's a bunch of different repayment methods for down payment assistance programs, from charging people up to 30% of their income, and having that be a variable based on what they make, to full forgiveness. And again, that's up to the trust. There's a lot of different examples that we could bring to you on how these programs are structured elsewhere, if this is a program that the trust wants to pursue. And then a second, but less impactful program would be a interest rate buy down. And the interest rate buy down, it's just like buying points on your mortgage. So again, it lowers people's monthly payments. In general, a interest rate buy down program is not going to make a substantial difference in making a house going from unaffordable to affordable for a lower income family. It might be a little bit better for a moderate income family if we can get that into SB 799, but it's probably not a primary program, but it works well with a down payment assistance program to work together to lower a household's monthly payment. So those are all of kind of the main programs that trusts are looking at or pursuing. There are other options out there, but these are what I would say, kind of the ones that are more common and where we won't have to invent a whole new program out of whole cloth.
I was going to mention before you ask your question, the purpose of this is obviously to give you a good overview of some of the programs out there, maybe not all of them, but at the end of the agenda, we were going to talk about future items and priorities and how we're going to establish those. And if we decide we want to do interest rate buy down, then I think we should probably have a session on the pros and the cons and the experiences that people have had with each of these programs that you decide you want to pursue. So that's what I was thinking as far as bringing that information to you.
Rob?
Thank you. What happens, like for instance, with an interest rate buy down? We get involved in that, or we provide money for the down payment itself.
Microphone.
In my experience, the first lender really doesn't like to have the source of the down payment come from somewhere else. They want the buyer to have equity and skin in the game, let's say. And so let's say, for instance, we participate in that and that person defaults on the loan. how do we stand with the first lender and the ownership of the property and so on?
So the way that that would typically work is, the first lender's in first position. If, the house, gets foreclosed on or short sale, due to the, default on the first lender's loan, then, the bank will sell the house. If they get fully repaid, then the money flows to the trust. And if the trust gets fully repaid, then any remaining money flows to the homeowner. So, if the bank doesn't get fully repaid, the trust doesn't get anything. Or if there's not enough money for the trust to get, partially repaid, or if not fully repaid, we may get partially repaid. So it really depends on what the value of the home is and, the value of the total loans will kind of house get sold. But there is a risk there, absolutely.
But the first mortgage holder, they don't have any problem with us putting money up for the down payment, because that, my experience personally in years of development and being a contractor, no first mortgage lender would be interested in lending on a property when the buyer has to borrow the money from somewhere else for the down payment.
Just to jump in, they love it. And the reason why they love it is because, unlike what your experience is, when the government puts down payment assistance in, that contribution is treated as if it's the buyer's contribution. They're not to the lender who gets, to the lender, the borrower who gets a government loan that's a soft second. There's no payments. It gets deferred down the road. The lender just treats that like it's the home buyer's own funds. So they love it. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
On the money that is returned optimistically through a soft loan procedure, do we also have an obligation to use those funds in a certain period of time?
I don't think that La Casa has said anything about how, other than the money has to be used in a way consistent with their guidelines. It's not just free money that we can use however we want, but I don't think that there's a timing requirement in any of their guidelines so far.
Well, question on that. It's a great question because it prompted another question. So when that gets paid back, is it still considered La Casa money then?
I believe so.
It's still considered to be that you have to spend it on program eligible, whether it's called La Casa or whatever, it comes back into the pot and then redistributed in the same program guidelines. It can go from perhaps home ownership to rental because it's within the same La Casa expenditure of funding eligible.
John, you have more questions, Paige? Okay, John.
So I don't want to get too far into the weeds, but it's been about 16 years since the financial meltdown in CMBS. Looking at the trust, how, for balance sheet purposes, how do we recognize these loans? Are we as a trust required to warehouse these loans? There's no, say, secondary market for these loans. We hold them until term.
Actually, I've heard of secondary market loans on these government deferred programs. I don't know a lot of details about it, but I've worked with other consultants who have worked and specialized in setting that up, especially for cities that, I remember the old days of redevelopment where they just had tens of millions of dollars of these down payment assistance loans. And they were interested in trying to do more loans. So the way they did that was they sold those portfolio of loans to some independent party at a discount, got a chunk of money back, and then continued offering loans instead of waiting until maturity. I think that's one of your questions, but I forgot the other one.
I asked that because if for certain commercial lenders, if this can be applied to their Community Reinvestment Act requirements.
Yeah, I can.
Bernadette? Bill?
Yeah.
Okay.
Two questions, South Bay, San Gabriel Valley has had a housing trust for a long time. And I understand, the Measure A funding's new, right? But what programs have they offered up in the past to their housing trust would be question one. And then question two, from a risk to the trust perspective, I think, and maybe it's even from an administrative perspective, some of these clearly seem to have less risk, a lot more administrative. And so again, your comments on that, please.
And so San Gabriel Valley, as well as Gateway Cities and Orange County, they've all had trusts for a number of years now. Most of their lending is residual receipt soft loans. San Gabriel Valley also has done tiny home projects, which are slightly different. And then they've done pre-development and acquisition lending. So, those are the big ones. I don't believe any of the trusts have done home ownership programs yet. And then on the risk side, they all have their risks. I would say the safest is probably the pre-development soft loans, but also you're not getting paid back, for 20 years or more. You start getting paid
Do you
back.
mean residual receipt loan? You said pre-development.
Oh, sorry. I apologize.
Yeah, residual receipt loan.
Yeah, residual receipt soft loans.
Yeah.
So you don't start getting paid back until year 15, 20, typically, and then, you get paid back by year 55, hopefully.
As far as staff intensity and time, you spend a chunk of time at the beginning, legal counsel and staff, setting up a residual receipt loan. Once it closes, it's just a deferred loan, it just sits on your books, waiting for repayment. As Grant said, 15 years maybe go by before some money starts coming back. So there might be some other staff, but not a lot of work there on that loan, very low.
So is there an underlying assumption that the trust would then, let's say, be in business for 55 years?
Yes.
Okay, any more questions? These are great questions. Thank you. Thank you, Brent.
Thank you.
All right, Steve has a question.
Question. All these questions are really what Jackie pointed out a few minutes ago. This is the pluses and minuses of all these alternatives. And so all these questions need to be part of that package that comes back to us understanding what our choices are. I'd like to add one thing to that as well, and that would be to the experience of some of the other trusts and their success in this. Is there some of these alternatives that, at least to date, have been more successful, more bang for their buck than some of the other ones? I know that's not really fair because we have more history on some, less on others, but at least give us some insight. And also even go as far as a combination of different types of portfolios. That would be helpful in understanding what we as a trust, what we want to be when we're a little more mature than our second meeting. There. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, now we're at 6E, which is the conditional commitment to provide funding on Cordery Avenue.
Okay, David, can you go back up the slides? So I'll walk through some factual information about this development. And then I will bring up Paul Silver from HRNA Advisors. They were our consultants on this project. We did an RFP back in December of last year for a bunch of consultants to evaluate projects. HRNA, they have over 50 years of experience. They've done $2 billion worth of deals, affordable housing deals throughout the country. And so they were one of the consulting firms chosen. So the project we're looking at today, and then after that, we'll bring up actually a vote. A vote is here and love for them to introduce themselves so that you can meet them. They've actually been active in the South Bay already with a number of projects. And so they can talk about that and also what they hope to achieve in the South Bay going forward too, as well. And so the project we're looking at is Hawthorne. This project is sponsored by the city. The city has also given them a conditional commitment letter to fund the project at $7 million, I believe. And so it's located at 14115 Porter Avenue, on Rosecrans and Prairie Avenues. It's 93 total units. It's all affordable, so it's all under very low income, 80% AMI. The target, and so yeah, target cost. So total development cost is $75.8 million, resulting in a per unit cost of $815,000. And so this project would have to abide by the labor agreement guidelines of CASA. So they are requesting $6 million from us using our first residual receipt product that Grant just mentioned. And that will fund the units about we're providing gap finance about $130,000 per unit for the project. Next slide. And so this is the location, Rosecrans and Prairie. Next slide. This is how it's going to look like when it's built. This is the second floor. There's community rooms, some open space. And then next slide. So this is how the AMI breakdown is for the entire project. What we'll be funding is here, the 30% and 50% AMI. So about 46 units in this bracket. That's where our funding is going. So the very low and extremely low income bracket. Next slide. I think I'll stop there and I'll go ahead and bring up Paul to talk more about their review of this project and why they're recommending it. Paul?
Thank you, Kevin. Good afternoon, board members. Again, Paul Silver, a partner with the Los Angeles Office of HR&A Advisors. What I want to do is try to relatively briefly summarize a lot of detail that goes into this project, and then take your questions and have you consider whether you're prepared to make a recommendation for committing the $6 million that vote is requesting in order to fund the project. As Runson said, this project is located on a 1-acre site in Hawthorne. It was a former redevelopment agency site when redevelopment was still alive in California and passed to the city. And then the city is using some of the 20% set-aside funds that it had under redevelopment to help make its financial commitment to the project. This is a site that does not require much in the way of city approvals. It's essentially exempt from all zoning requirements. It will be exempt from CEQA. So on the procedural side, it's relatively straightforward in terms of entitlement processing. The project, the 93-unit project is, of course, entirely new construction, and it's being proposed by Abode Communities, which is a highly experienced affordable housing developer working across Southern California. They, as I said, and as Ronson said, are requesting a $6 million loan, which would be an example of the kind of soft money residual receipts loan that Grant described at the beginning of his presentation, a fairly standard kind of municipal participation or local government participation in these kinds of projects. It does involve assembling other types of funding, and I'll describe what some of those are, most importantly, including 4% tax credits from the state of California and an allocation of tax-exempt funds. The total project cost is about $76 million, of which you're being asked to fund just a share of about 8%. If a vote is successful in assembling all the required financing for the project, they estimate that they would be ready to start construction by about November 1 of 2027, complete construction and achieve full occupancy by January 1st of 2030. The project site in Hawthorne is located in an area that has direct access to a lot of community services, including parks, elementary schools, multiple metro bus stops, and various other community amenities, which makes it particularly well suited for family occupancy. The 93 units are comprised of 1 and 2 bedroom units, and they would be rented by individuals or families. As Ronson said, the rent restrictions involved here would be the 30 to 50%, the extremely low and very low income units of the total 93 units in the project. And it is being recommended that your trust be responsible with your $6 million contribution, if you choose to make it, for 46 of those 93 units, which are the number of units in those 2 income categories. The other units in the building will be affordable at 60 to 70% of area median income, but those fall outside of the funding requirements from La Casa. Just a few words about Abode, and their representative is here today, so you can certainly ask them more questions if you have them. But Abode is a vertically integrated development company, meaning that they build, operate, maintain, and provide services to the residents in their project. They have completed about 81 projects with about 4,500 units. That represent a investment of about $1 billion over their history. They have also asset managed 47 properties with about 3,000 units, and property manage another 50 projects and provide resident services to about 25 of them. So they have considerable experience at every element of the project implementation stage of development. The way that the ownership of the project will be structured will be with Abode as the general partner, owning essentially 1% of the project, and then they will attract a tax credit investor who will own, as a limited partner, who will own the other 99% and take advantage of the tax benefits from being a tax credit investor. But Abode will be responsible for assembling all the project financing, managing the development, managing the annual operations, and completing the development. Even though their ownership stake is small relative to the tax credit investor, they have complete responsibility for managing the implementation of the project. In terms of the way the financing on the project is structured, Abode will be seeking an allocation of tax-exempt bonds from the state. They'll be seeking 4% tax credit, federal tax credits, and an allocation of state tax 4% tax credits, also under a competitive application process with the state. Very importantly, for the structure of the financing, the development fee that Abode earns from this project, whose total amount is within the guidelines that apply to this kind of funding of about $9 million, they will be paid at loan closing only about 2.8 million of that fee at specified points in the development process. The balance of over 6 million will be deferred, meaning that they are not taking a payment to themselves out of cash flow until there is enough cash flow left over after paying their hard money debt to a bank and all of the soft money lenders like the trust. That provides a very significant advantage to the overall financing of the project. The soft money lenders, in addition to your trust, will be the city of Hawthorne in the amount of $7 million. And then Abode is proposing to also apply to the LA County Development Authority for about $10 million. That application process is in process right now with proposals due, I think it's on June 8th. And then an award decision of those funds should be coming from the leadership of the LA County Development Authority in August in preparation for ABODE proceeding to file its application with the state for 4% tax credits and a bond allocation. In terms of the financial structure of the project, as I said, the total cost is around $75.9 million, of which about 815 about 64% of that is for hard construction, with the balance of it for a variety of soft costs and financing costs. And based on our comparison of their financial project profile with what we're seeing in all of the recently awarded WCASA funds for other projects, this project definitely falls in the roughly $800,000 per unit range within the general frame of all the projects that WCASA has been funded, and even more so if the comparison, rather than being to all the recently funded projects, focuses only on the podium projects, which are at the fiscal scale of what ABODE is proposing. So at least, although the numbers sound large, they are pretty much in line with other projects that are being funded these days. In terms of operational feasibility, here again, the project looks very good. They have a 1.15 debt coverage ratio in the very first year, meaning that there is a multiple on top of the amounts that they would owe to all of their lenders in order to make the various loans that are required, with an increasing debt coverage ratio throughout the first 15 years of the cash flow projection. So the relative balance between income and expenses looks quite good. The operating characteristics assume 5% vacancy, an annual rent growth of 2.5%, and an annual operating expense growth of 3.5%. But all of that, the rent in particular, of course, is subject to the decisions that HUD makes every year when it increases the area median income for Los Angeles County, and then that's distributed into the various income categories between 30 and 70% of AMI. So all in all, we believe that the project definitely merits your consideration of approval. Again, it's a well-conceived project in a good location, targeted to individuals and families. Costs are in line with other comparable projects that are being proposed in this region at the moment. But there are some things that will need to be completed before a construction loan from the trust is made. And we've identified a series of those funding conditions in the materials that are in your agenda packet. And we can go through those in more detail if you would like. So our recommendation, the staff's recommendation, is to make the conditional award of the $6 million. Should you choose to do so today, your outside legal counsel has prepared a conditional commitment letter in a form that memorializes a number of terms, appropriate terms and conditions. And it's in a form that ABODE requires in order to show your funding as a commitment that will satisfy the requirements of the LA County Development Authority for its loan, and even more importantly, for the Tax Credit Allocation Committee for the 4% tax credits and the bond allocation. I'm not sure if outside counsel is here today, but we can talk about what's in their letter if that's something we want to discuss.
Thank you so much, Paul. Paul and his staff has been such a great help in terms of helping us think through this project. We'll get into some questions, and I'm actually going to have David throw up the financial model because I think it's important that you guys see all that too. But before we do that, I do want to bring up a Bo to kind of talk about their experience, what they've done in the South Bay. One of their more recent projects was in San Pedro Beacon, which was a project that we were following really closely. So, or you want to?
Bronson, I just want to jump in. We know the packet came separately from the main agenda, and so everybody has a copy. And the letter that you were referring to starts at page 19 of our packet, and that has the conditions that have to be satisfied for the loan to be made. John has a comment.
Thank you for the HRA presentation. So in your presentation, are you here as an advisor to the developer?
No, as an advisor to you.
Oh, the trust. Okay, thank you. Good to know.
Yeah.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having us. My name is Laura Rodriguez. I'm the Senior Vice President of Development for Abode Communities. I'm joined by my colleague Megan Pearson, who leads the day-to-day work on this project. And I'm also joined by Jim Williams, who is our architect. As a South Bay resident, I'm particularly thrilled to be here today. Really honored that you are considering and trusting us with what I believe is your first residual receipts funding commitment. So very exciting. I want to assure you, as Paul mentioned, we have a very significant track record of doing this. We are coming up on our 58th anniversary as a nonprofit organization focused on this work. I've been doing this here at Abode for 20 years. My colleagues have worked in this space about the same time and even longer. So we have a tremendous commitment to this work. And as I mentioned, particularly excited to be working with you, the city of Hawthorne in the South Bay region. And hopefully this is not the only time we get to connect. Would love to talk with you more about your goals. Let me just tell you a little bit more about ourselves, and then I'll hand it back to Ronson or Paul, however you want to handle the next steps. So as I mentioned, we've been around for 58 years. We were formed in the civil rights era, right around 1968. Our focus has always been on serving families and seniors. Also, we serve households with special needs. We've spent some time doing permanent supportive housing. In fact, the project that Ronson mentioned in San Pedro was one of our first modular construction projects that is focused on permanent supportive housing for folks, and happy to tell you more about that later. We're also really excited about the work that we're doing around in partnership with school districts and providing educator workforce housing. If that's something that's of interest to you all, happy to come back at another time and talk with you about that. So as Paul mentioned, we are vertically integrated. We are in this for the long haul, so we don't sell our properties. We own and operate them for decades. As you probably know, the funding commitments for a project like this are typically 55 years long and sometimes longer. So we really care about how they are designed, how they're managed, and that they hold up. So we are conservative about our cost projections and our operating costs because we want to make sure that we take good care of them and take good care of our residents. Let me pause there and see if there are any questions for me, or I can hand it back.
You, Laura, any questions for Laura? Thank you so much. Thanks.
I do have some questions. I mean, is this the juncture at which you want us to?
Yeah, well, let me, before we get there, let me
question from Michelle.
Okay, go ahead, Michelle.
I have a couple of questions, and I don't know if now's the right time for this. I've read the pro forma. I've looked at all the documents. Are they basing the rental rates on the tax credit rate? Is that how they're basing their income, the rental rates?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's based off of it. And let me walk you through the pro forma. I know it's a little small in the packet. The cheapest rent in this unit in this complex is going to be about $800 a month, and that's at the 30% AMI level. And that's just governed by like how the AMI, the area median income, is calculated in the corresponding rent associated with it. And feel free to jump in if I'm misspeaking, Paul and Laura. And then the most expensive rent is a 2-bedroom at the 70% AMI level, which is about $2,000. So the range of the rents in this building is $800 a month through $2,000 a month. You'll see in the pro forma here, I have it up. The first year, they expect to get about $1.5 million worth of rental income. And that will increase 2.5% a year projected based on if the area median income changes. And so if it changes, then they have to change the rents. So it's not a discretionary rent increase or anything like that. It's only if the area median income increases. And so this project will generate about $1.5 million of revenue yearly. The operating expenses to run this place is going to run about $845,000 a year and growing per inflation. And that will net an operating income of about $500,000 a year. Of that, about $431,000 will service the debt that Abode will take on. And the remaining cash flow, about $76,000, will then fall to a management fee, and then the rest back to the other borrowers, lenders, including us, which is we're there. It says COG, but sorry, it should be the Regional Housing Trust. And so if the funding falls through like this, we will start getting a payback according to this model. But we'll have to see if what the vacancy rates are, and there might be other factors that might affect the expenses and whatnot. So that is what I kind of wanted to walk through on the model side.
Ronson, I had a question on the payback, and I asked our council about this. I don't think any of us are affordable housing developers yet. But the way the payback is structured is 50-50. 50% is divided among 3 soft lenders, including us, and 50% goes to the developer. And it seems like that's a big chunk going back to the developer. And I understand that it's deferred, it's residual rent payback. So is that normal? And Lauren said, because Lauren works with Westside also, and she said it's normal.
Yeah, you are correct. It is a 50-50 split. But as the model suggests, there's only enough cash flow after repayment of the bank loan for the residual 50% to go to the soft money lenders. The developer is not taking out anything in that particular line as a result.
Not taking out anything in the beginning, you're deferring it.
No, it's completely deferred throughout at least the first 15 years. I don't remember, you take your cash flow out further. So the developer will get that, deferred $6 million plus, only to the extent that they perform better than this projection, or if there's an eventual refinancing of the project at a later point in time.
Thank you. Are you taking questions now?
Yes.
All right, any questions, Rob?
Thank you. Thank you.
Hey, hang on a minute, Rob. Michelle, does that answer your question?
No, it actually didn't. Like I said, I read this, but what I want to know is, how did you initially come up with the initial rent rates? Was it based on the tax credit rate? Was it based on, so it's based on the tax credit rate. So then they will be deed restricted as far as how much you can go up each year. Because my biggest concern here is, as you probably all know, affordable units aren't protected by AB 1482. So the last thing I want to happen is all of a sudden these go up higher than what somebody could afford.
Well, the rents are set by HUD when they adjust the annual median income for Los Angeles County every year, and then they get apportioned into the various household income categories by number of occupants per unit, and that sets out.
But if it's protected though by tax credit, your limit on regardless how much you can go up each year. And that's what I want to make sure. I just don't want to all of a sudden find out rents are going up higher than even AB 1482 would allow.
My recollection is that there was a cap on annual increases, but Lauren, if you want to say more about that.
And then I have one other question for that. what happens when someone all of a sudden their income limit goes higher than what is allowed by this project? Are you going to allow them to are you going to give them a notice that they have to move out? Are they signing something in the beginning that lets them know that? Because obviously your hope is always that somebody's going to do better and be able to get higher increases, and that's why how you get different new people into these projects. What's that look like?
So this is Laura. I don't know if you can see me, but hopefully you can hear me. So I'm going to try and answer all of your questions. The first question is about is the affordable level and the rents protected? And the answer is yes. So the trusts will have a reg agreement that's recorded. The tax credit committee has, a regulatory agreement. So there are multiple documents, which we just refer to as the project is deed restricted. So it has to remain at these affordable levels for 55 years. As Paul mentioned, each year HUD updates what a 30% AMI rent in Los Angeles County is. And so that gets adjusted each year. But as Paul also mentioned, there are caps on how high that can go. So the designated area median incomes are deed restricted, and then the rents are also regulated and managed or capped over time. Your second question, I think, was what happens if someone's income goes up? The answer is that person is allowed to stay, and the amount of rent that they would pay is based on their adjusted income. And that can, kind of increase every year. So it's just probably the easiest way to say is it's just the same kind of formula that is used as when they initially moved in to make sure that they are still paying 30% of their income as rent. And then it just gets adjusted. And you may have had a third question. Now I forgot.
Well, with that, then eventually some units can become could be really considered not really affordable units anymore. Because if somebody continues to get increases higher than 30, 50, 60, 70, maybe they get to 100%, and you're allowing them to stay, though technically that's really not an affordable unit anymore, correct?
So so that is regulated as to how long they can stay and how much their income can grow over time. I think the upper end is like 140% growth from their original level. That is a little bit unusual. It does happen, but it is not the standard here.
And then my last question is, I understand that we included an audit, and there was a question in where it said, would there be annual audits? And there would be. The annual audits, will those actually cover somebody looking at the rental, not just the finances, but also looking at all of the income of all of the participants as well as what their rates are, so that we can verify that these are staying affordable?
Yes, there's an annual audit of the project. Typically, it goes to the tax credit investor first because they have the biggest stake in the financial performance of the project. But you can certainly request, and I think I remember that this came up in our discussion with your legal counsel about requesting that a vote provide a copy of that annual audit to you. And I'm sure they would agree to do that.
Thank you. You've answered my questions.
I'll just add for the group that not only does the tax credit agency require annual monitoring, as does the tax credit investor, so does the county of Los Angeles, and the city can also require the same. It's the same reporting, so we do it once for everyone. And so, of course, you are absolutely entitled to the same sort of compliance monitoring. So that's standard practice.
Thank you. Rob, you've been very patient.
Yes, thank you. My research on this in my area of interest and the questions therefore are a little bit different area here. You mentioned early at the beginning of your presentation that this project does not come under the zoning requirements for this area. Is that correct?
That's my understanding.
The reason that he made that comment is the city still owns the site. And as a result of the way, I'm looking at Councilman Montero, the reason that it is not subject to, say, standard zoning is because the city owns it and has its own zoning authority to approve what it desires to approve there. However, having said that, even if it didn't, this project would have been approved under kind of a standard density bonus land use approval approach.
That's what I was getting at. So even though Hawthorne could essentially spot zone this one place to allow it, it does not come under the usual zoning for this area. And that's because it's a density bonus.
It's a residential area.
Yeah, it conformed, there are other multifamily properties on the street. But what I was saying is that they had the right to just take their own discretionary approach to it. But if they didn't own it and we had just purchased the site, we would have gone through the standard land use approval process for that street. And it would have conformed to the same zone. And what I'm saying is we would have just used one of the other land use tools that we use as affordable housing developers.
So it's a density bonus project.
It could have been, but the city didn't need to use a density bonus.
Okay, all right. So this brings me to the point that there are 99 units, 54 parking spaces. And 54 parking spaces. Does that conform to parking requirements for most developments in that area?
It is, because we have parking on the street, and also we have the park there that have plenty of parking overnight, so.
And it is well established statistically that these projects typically the households in these types of projects typically do not require nearly the same parking demand as other kinds of projects. And there's a lot of public transportation proximate to the site.
Okay, all of the other units, well, not all of them, most of the other units are 2 and 3 stories. This is 5. Is there a height limit in that area? And does this conform to the height limit?
It conforms to all of the city's requirements.
But not to the standard height limit for the rest of the neighborhood?
5-story project?
Yeah.
Okay. Has there ever been a traffic study no need for a traffic study because most of these people.
And the project is exempt from CEQA under AB 130.
I think we can assume that it's been green lighted.
It's already been approved.
Yeah.
No, I realize that. I'm just asking, if, I appreciate that. I'm just asking whether or not this conforms to the usual standard zoning for that area. Yeah, okay. Has there been any consideration toward the infrastructure upgrades like sewer, water, gas, power, schools, police, fire department? That's all been considered?
All good.
And all of that work that. You seem pretty happy about this. I just look at this in terms of my own city where we have had some developments and we look at those and we go, okay, great, it's gonna improve the housing and so on and so forth, but we don't have the infrastructure to support that. And so the developer has considered upgrading all of the infrastructure that's baked into the construction cost?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the city, I think, has done its own analysis of the current infrastructure, but typically if there is a need to make an upgrade, it's part of our construction budget. Yeah, we would handle it.
Okay. All right. And then to the developer and contractor fees, I looked at these numbers and it says that the developer fees, the contractor fees, it says the developer fees, $9,367,135 are the fees. And the contractor fee and the contingency fee are together $7,672,593. How much of that is contingency fee and how much of that is contractor fee?
We typically hold a 10% owner's hard cost contingency on the construction contract. I'm looking at my colleague because I don't have the exact amount that is the breakout, but that's our standard. And you may have heard me say that we're fairly conservative, especially this early in the project. So we start with a 10% owner's contingency. So I would say, would you say 7 million?
Yeah, the two of them are combined in the
Yeah,
report.
it's
It
probably-
just says that they're together
it's
about
probably,
7.6.
The owner's share is probably 5 million and the difference is the contractor.
So the contingency fee is about 10% of the hard cost of 48 million? Roughly.
Yes,
Okay, and then the balance would be contractor fee.
yes,
Okay.
which is baked into the 48, yeah.
All right, appreciate it, thank you.
And thank you, Michelle.
Can
Get a
you,
microphone, please. Thanks.
I have a loud voice, but thank you. Can you talk for a minute about the pending funding sources and how giving this award would maybe help contribute towards receiving those awards?
Sure. As I'm sure most of you are familiar with, one of the real complications of affordable housing development in California and anywhere else in the country is that it requires layering a lot of different sources of funding together. It's not just financed by one bank mortgage. And so at this point, the kind of loan commitment that you are being asked to consider today is one of two preliminary commitments, along with a preliminary commitment that has been made with a bank to use the proceeds from the tax exempt loan to leverage all the other resources. So what happens from this point forward is that a BOD will be applying now actively to the LA County Development Authority for about $10 million. And in the scoring for their consideration of that competitive award, there are points aside for other financial commitments that have already been made, of which this is potentially one. And your award letter, if you choose to make it, will be very important for increasing a BOD score to be competitive for the LACTA loan. And similarly, if Hawthorne, your board, and LACTA make their award, that will make a BOD very competitive for the 4% tax credits and the bond allocation, which is an even more competitive process.
Just want to add one piece about timing, which may be part of your question. The timing of this award that you're considering today is particularly important because the LACTA application process only happens once a year. So we only get one opportunity to apply for it. So while I hope you vote yes today, if you didn't, we would have to wait a whole year to have this opportunity again to apply.
Any further questions? Alex.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the presentation. Just let me say that, we put an RFP out, right? And we had 9 developers responding. So, and we choose them, okay? And this project actually before was awarded to another developer that was going to do, it was veterans housing, but it didn't go through. So that way, then we start all over again. So this process has been rehashed and rehashed. So finally, we got somebody like a developer that is willing to work with the city. And that's why we put that $7 million down to say that we really want that affordable housing there because, Hawthorne have become impossible renting over there. Those, and I don't think they're going to have any problem renting those apartments because it is on a residential area. And it's just like 1 block away from Rose Grant Avenue that have everything, on Rose Grant, you guys know. And then we have a park that is 100 meters away, where there is a preschool, and across the street there is a senior housing across the street. They can walk to this grocery store. So basically, it's a very central area there. And I think whoever's going to live there is going to be happy and ever happy, right? Because they have a church close by. So all the amenities there for them to live and be happy about it. So, and parking, that was one of the big issues in our city council because, parking is a headache in the city of Hawthorne. And so we rushed about the park, and finally we come up with a number that we've satisfied with. And in addition, because of our park, we have parking there. And then even on the other side of the park, we have another parking structure that is available too. So parking is not going to be an issue over there. So I'm hoping that my colleagues will support this because like Ronson said, that this is the money for 25-26 that we have to be allocated by June 30th of this year. So I think that was something, everything. Thank you.
I think Bill has the last question.
Yeah, so Alex answered some of that. So this has to be committed by June of this year, right? And so it was a 2-part question. So it has to be committed by June of this year. We've got the, hey, we're going to go get the $50 million in, next year through June of 2027. What happens if that funding doesn't happen? How does the $6 million then come into play or come back into play or whatever?
Yeah, I just want to just want to be clear too, it's not like we have a gun to our head, so I don't want you guys to feel that way. We can always get a waiver from La Casa to extend our timeline. But typically they want to see us obligate the funds within a year. So don't let that be a factor into your decision making today.
As to the funding, if that doesn't materialize, then it just comes back to the.
Yeah, it just comes back. And so they have a year to get the additional funding. If they're not successful, we have discretion to take it back, or we can extend that timeline.
Good point. Steve.
Thank you. My comments and questions are not about the merits of this project. It's more about what we as a housing trust want to be. And so I'll start with that, but it's not about the merits. On its face value, it certainly serves the community very well, and I support that. The consequences if we're not committing the funds by June 30th, where do those funds go? What's our alternatives for those funds?
They just stay with us until we commit them. I mean, there are funds.
We get the funds.
Yeah, there are funds, and there is this goal to commit them, but we're a brand new trust. I mean, La Casa is not going to expect us to be able to spend all our money as for that fast responsibly.
We can get a waiver to keep it.
Okay, I understand. So the decision deadline, and we're just talking about that, the decision, what is our decision deadline?
Yeah, again, like, don't feel that there is a decision deadline. I offer that. I think there is, for this particular project though, there is a deadline in that they're trying to go after the additional funding by June. What was the date? June 8th. So if they miss that deadline, they have to wait a whole nother year and delays the project on behalf of Hawthorne for a whole nother year.
So that's a decision deadline for someone else. That's not a decision deadline for the housing trust.
Correct.
Okay.
But there's an action item today on our agenda.
I understand. So the other my follow-up question is, of this $76 million, $45 million of it is pending. How big are those hurdles for that other $45 million for those other organizations to come forth with their commitments and their timeframes that they can successfully bring to the table? And is that also June 8th?
Steve, I don't know if you can see this slide, but I asked HR&A to do, because this was exactly my question as well. If maybe you can make it bigger. They've got the committed funds are the committed funds are in green, and there's two outstanding ones. Go up to the line, David. Is that you? So June 8th is the Licata NOFA that they have to apply for. They get tax credit applications in September, and then December 9th is the award. And if you look at the bottom, the NOFA, if we give our money, they become more competitive, becomes moderate. But the last one is highly competitive. So this is just sort of a guide, and maybe it doesn't completely answer your question, but I wanted to make sure you saw this because I thought it was part of what you're asking.
Yes. Thank you. So you were gonna answer the question about the hurdles?
I think Jackie handled it. That is the one, but just to say that the tax credit and tax exempt bond allocation are highly competitive. There are a lot of affordable housing developers, around the state seeking, allocations. And the way that the tax credit allocation committee works is that they make awards in sort of designated categories. And there is this going to the rest of LA County or so? There's a separate maximum allocation that they will make to the city of Los Angeles. And then there is a separate allocation for the rest of LA County. And that's the pool, the sub pool that this project will be competing in. And there are so far lately, there have been 2 rounds of tax credit applications available to developers each year. Abode will be seeking to compete in the second round in September.
The way that the timing works for tax credits, there are typically 3 rounds. Most recently, only the first 2 rounds of a given year have state tax credits as part of the process. So I just have to make one slight adjustment to this. which means that instead of applying for tax credits in September, we will apply for tax credits in January because the September round won't have the state credits available, but they should be, it's all up to the legislature. They should be available in January. So we'll hear from LACDA in August or September and then prepare for the January application.
And then I would just note that the proposed commitment letter that is before you for consideration today allows the developer time, to continue seeking funding if for some reason one of these sources of funding falls out along the way, so that your commitment, would remain in place and allow them to continue trying to find other fund if something doesn't work out the way that as planned.
All right.
Sorry. The one question I would have is when it's going through these different stages, are we expected to send letters or do we have any role in helping with the other approvals?
Not that I know of. I mean, I'm sure about it.
Just the letter.
Is happy to, to get other kinds of support, but unlike, state legislation, they're not looking for you to go to Sacramento on their behalf.
Just let me say that, Stephen, that the $6 million from the Survey Park Regional Trust is secure, regardless if it's in the bank there with the Survey Trust or it's loaned to the development, right? The money would never be at risk. So basically, it is to show that it might give the Survey Trust a good start and say, look, they started like a month ago and they're active and they want to help with affordable housing in South Bay. And the first project ended up to be in Hawthorne because it was shovel ready, right? So that's the kind of thing that we're trying to see to show that we are proactive and we're trying to address an issue that is being all over the map, right? Affordability. So I believe that the $6 million would give us a little bit of advantage to go to the state and to the county and say, we have partners. That's it.
All right. Yes, Steve?
We're in a conversation. It's okay. Yeah, this conversation.
Don't mind me.
No, I'm asking the chair's permission to have this conversation.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Like I said earlier, I'm not really commenting on the merits of this project. What I'm concerned about is what we want to be as a trust. So we just finished an agenda item that's going to come back, I think in June. Is that our turnaround to make a presentation on what trusts do, how they fund things, what their success rates, everything that Jackie brought up at the beginning of this conversation. Is that coming back at that point in time?
No, but what I was saying is I'd like to find out what specific programs you're interested in to come back and we'll do it probably program by program because there's probably a lot to say about each one.
Okay. And I share that. So I'd like to see that. My hesitancy here is I'd like to see what business we're going to be going into.
I think that's a very
Thank you. There it is.
Yeah, it is a very valid point, Stephen. We are putting the cart in front of the horse a little bit.
We are.
Yeah, and that's because, Hawthorne is under the gun for the application process. We do have this money from fiscal year 25-26. And so we wanted to bring this before you all for consideration.
Okay. Well, that's my hesitation for taking a positive action today. I'd like to have more information on what we're going to look like and have that discussion before we make that commitment. And again, that's not on the merits, that's on the on our priorities as a trust. Thank you.
You're holding the mic. Comment?
Go ahead, Michelle.
I mean, I was gonna make a motion to.
Let me just ask, are we done with the discussion right now among the board? If we are, I'd like to see if there's any, do you have anything?
Just a quick question. How much do we have in the trust right now?
This is coming out of the money
That's good.
25-26.
Right.
$7 million.
$7 million.
Yeah, and then we're getting another
For the next round.
for 26-27.
I did have just one other question about it. So if we were to make a motion and approve this commitment today, and it went through the process for the other funding sources, and let's say it gets to the tax credit, the 4% tax credit, it doesn't get that. What happens then? And would our commitment be erased or what goes?
Yeah, that would be our discretion. So we can, based on the commitment letter that Lauren and her team drafted, we have that discretion to pull it back. If they can't meet that 12-month deadline. And then or we can have the discretion to extend it and give them another shot.
So then, so the discretion could be, if we could revisit it if they don't, and then decide at that point if we want to extend it.
Right.
Okay.
Ronson, as far as you know, we don't have any other projects at this point in time to consider. Is that true?
No, that's a really good. It's actually really hard, I think, to meet some of these guidelines in the process. So it really is contingent on affordable developers like Abode to come into our area and work a shovel-ready project, which we're not aware of right now.
We could do a call for projects, because you know.
Well, I know, but
We got these two, we got Inglewood in this one, and the Inglewood project fell through.
Thank you. No, in listening to the project, I think we have a great opportunity. Usually it takes a while, and I understand the concerns that you've raised, but we also have an opportunity to really kick off this housing trust and do exactly what we're all here to do, which is to find ways to build affordable housing in the way that local jurisdictions want. The city of Hawthorne has done the work. This is what they want. They're putting skin in the game as well. So I think these are the types of projects that I would be happy to support.
Is there, Paige, you have a question?
I was just going to make a comment as well. If we're talking about this project in particular, I think the South Bay in general has made bold action when it comes to housing and homelessness. And I see this as just that, and I'd hate to be a housing trust that is just looking for perfection and actually not making an impact. So I think we can, there's still hurdles along the way. And I understand the hesitancy, absolutely, and we should have like a clear direction. But given the support from the city and the financial support that they're more than matching, I think speaks volumes. Thank you.
Rob, real quick.
I have to agree with Stephen to a certain point that it would be, to me, it would be better to have just a little bit more time to consider this. But my problem is that this is a density bonus project. And so maybe my question would be to the trust itself or to Jackie. Are most of the projects that we're going to be funding going to be density bonus projects?
No idea.
I had hoped that the trust would have some way of not doing
I
it.
think by nature, an affordable housing project is absolutely going to use a density bonus to get there.
And there is the costing guideline rule, and Grant, I don't know if you remember it, but there is a restriction on the funding can't be used for density bonus units. So that is.
Can't be used?
It cannot be used for density bonus units.
So that's what we're doing here. Is that correct?
No, it's not a density bonus
No,
project.
doing it here.
Yeah, it's not.
That was what it was stated a few minutes ago. I asked about that. He said it is a density bonus project.
No.
But we're not funding all.
It's not subject to zoning.
No, it's not density bonus.
Yeah.
Can you clarify that? Is it or is it not a density bonus project?
You can verify that.
It's not a density bonus project. I was just trying to make the clarification that if it hadn't been land owned by the city and hadn't gone through the city's discretionary process, that we likely would have used the density bonus land use approval pathway to get the project approved, but we didn't need to go that way. I was just trying to make
I understand. I appreciate that. And don't get me wrong, I don't want to split hairs here, but at the very beginning of Paul's presentation, he said it is not subject to zoning. So in a way, it is a density bonus project. Either way you call it that or not, this building is not subject to the local zoning. Because the city owns it or not, that's another reason why. But it's basically the same thing that happens in most of the cities in the South Bay where developer wants to build something like this and it does not comply to the zoning. The height limit is not there, the parking requirements, and so on and so forth. So Alex, I appreciate the fact that Hawthorne wants this to happen, and that you're putting money into it. And for that reason, I'd say, well, okay, then density bonus or not, you want this, the city, your city of Hawthorne wants this. And so I would say, okay, I think maybe we should go ahead with that. So perhaps my question about building density bonus units or not is something for the future that we should discuss on the next one and the next one and the next one, and whether or not we want to continue doing that, or look for projects that have a little bit more respect for the local zoning requirements for local control. If that's impossible, then I'd like to have that explained to me, and see if we can work on that. But for this particular incident, because of the enthusiasm from the city of Hawthorne, and that you're working toward making this happen, whether it is a density bonus or not, okay, all right, I'm good with that.
And we have vented a lot of the project.
So Rob, just to clarify, and we're gonna move on, just to clarify, in the very beginning of Adam and Grant's presentation at the last meeting, they said that a building does not get built that the city doesn't want built. It complies with city wishes and city zoning. I'm gonna move on. Nina, do you have a question?
No, it's great.
Michelle?
I'm just gonna go ahead and make the motion.
Well, hang on a minute. Is there anybody in the public who
Oh,
wants to comment on
got
this topic? The answer, I don't see any hands raised. Is there anybody on Zoom? No emails on this? And then to frame the motion, that you can see from the packet that the letter, with the terms is dated even as of yesterday. So it's still a little bit of a work in progress. So any motion would give discretion to the director and the council to nail a couple of details, not the substance. It won't change the substance of the terms, but for example, I see things, references to South Bay Cog or the trust in some of the documents. So things like that. Do you want to comment on anything else that might be changed?
No, but I think that flexibility would be helpful because we were going back and forth with about, up until yesterday or today, just so to make sure that the language is perfect. I see some blanks for the APN number and the date. So there are some minor details that will need to be finalized, but not the substantive terms of what you're approving today.
So with that, I will call for a motion on those terms.
Okay, so moved, and then also with the caveat that if they can't secure the rest of the funding, that the money reverts back to us, and we can decide at that point whether to extend the deadline for the project.
There a second? Page seconds. Roll call.
Okay, Keldorf,
Yes.
Montero,
Yes.
Stamen,
Yes.
Suarez,
Yes.
Puff. Yes. Barnett,
Yes.
Mearstem,
No.
Kaliderovich,
Yes.
Segura,
Yes.
Haji,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
and Ramirez.
Yes.
That was 11. Right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, 11 yes, and 1 no. Motion passed.
Thank you, everybody. That was a really good discussion. Thank you. Paul and Lauren, thank you for appearing, and Ronson, thank you.
You've done a lot of work, so now let's have some fun. So the next is the logo, and we'd love to put the logo on the agenda, on the website. We're waiting very eagerly to do that. Colleen unfortunately couldn't be here today, but she's on Zoom and she wants to present the logo options. If you are not ready to make a decision today, we understand, but if you could just give us some direction, we'd appreciate it.
If you have a slide, Colleen.
Sorry.
She has a slide.
You can bring up the item. Yeah.
I have a memo. I'm going to show that in just a minute. But yeah, I'm here to present the more fun item on the agenda.
It's on page 46 of the packet.
Can you speak louder, Colleen?
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So As a new organization, it's necessary to establish a brand presence, and to accomplish this, we need a logo to be created as the keystone to an eventual larger brand kit. And that will provide a centralized collection of consistent visual assets that ensure professional, cohesive brand identity across all platforms. And some things to consider when choosing a logo is the number of colors. Limiting colors on a logo to 2 or 3 colors is important to ensure high recognition, improve memorability, versatility across different media, and promoting an uncluttered and professional appearance. Logos with fewer colors are also easier and less expensive to print and reproduce and display across various platforms. And it allows the brand to stand out in a crowded marketplace. Color ratio is also important to consider. Most effective color ratio is typically 60-30-10. That's 60% dominant, 30% secondary, and sometimes a 10% accent. To ensure visual balance. And for simplicity and memorability, many of the world's most effective logos use only 1 or 2 colors. So on that note, I'm going to share my screen and show you just a few noteworthy logos that make an impact. And so the board should also consider whether or not it wants to use colors and fonts from the existing COG brand kit, complementary colors to those, or completely new colors and fonts. And also color psychology can be important to consider. And I included here a list of colors and their associated psychologies. Green is associated with balance, harmony, growth. Blue is associated with trust, so it might be a good color to consider for the South Bay Housing Trust. And then I'm going to show you just what we came up with in terms of the logo that was preferred by our staff. And then next to it, I have one with a tagline underneath it. Then there's a alternate with different colors. These are in COG colors currently, these both the orange and the green and blue motif. And then there's a totally different logo there to look at. And then we had these other ones that were developed, but I think they just have too many colors there, as I mentioned. And then just some peer comparisons of other housing trusts to take a look at. So our recommendation is to come up with a logo that features 1 to 3 colors. Perhaps it's complementary, but you can also use from our color palette. And we like the coastal motif that aligns with the South Bay coast adjacent location.
Is there a way to divide, like, how many people like the complementary colors to the COG logo, the blue and green, versus how many people like the orange and other colors being introduced, and then we can just proceed from there?
Or do they like?
They're numbered here.
Yeah, in the agenda packet, I numbered them if you guys wanted to give us direction on specific ones.
Yeah.
So it's easier, but
Everybody is really loud.
yeah,
Thank you, sis.
if that one's on, that one might be also being a problem.
Is there one that everybody really hates?
Hey, I'm just kidding. Too many colors. I like number 4.
You like number 4? How many people like number 4? It's the one this one here.
Yeah, oops.
I just like more subtle. That's me though. If it was one of the top ones, but instead of the green, it was like a light blue. It was like blue. Instead of the same colors.
Can you hear that, Tony?
Colleen, can you make it blue and blue?
Sure, we can do anything.
Can you do it right now? I mean, show us.
Not right now.
Just drop it in AI.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Suggestion is.
I'm sorry, I'm not looking at what colors you're looking at right now, so.
He's looking at was it number one?
Either number one or number two, but changing the green to a light blue instead. Just keeping it
Okay.
in its consistent color way.
Okay, yeah, we can definitely do that.
Yeah, yeah.
You want to stick mostly with blue and green as opposed to orange and yellow? Am I hearing that?
I kind of like orange and yellow, but.
You like orange and yellow? How many people like blue and green? Just sticking with that
I
palette.
like blue and green.
And I like the tagline underneath.
And then how many people would not do blue and green, but would do the other colors, orange, red, blue, etc.?
Like blue?
I just got.
Don't like the orange today.
All right, that was an outlier. That's an outlier. Right.
You said you liked the tagline?
You like orange?
No,
I like that tagline underneath
Oh,
homes,
yeah.
communities.
Yeah, I do
futures.
too.
Tagline. So you're looking at number 2?
Homes, communities, futures.
I could go with two.
Many words.
Too many notes.
I mean, like I said, I think the consensus is generally bluish, greenish.
He says, too many notes on number 2.
You follow your heart.
So, I mean, just from a timing perspective, right?
Right.
So if we say, hey, it's 2 or 5 or 12 or whatever, we're not gonna go start putting this on everything after tonight, right? Or
Yes.
are we?
We would.
If there's consensus, yes, but if
We're
not,
giving out money and we're logo.
Giving out money with a logo, right?
But we can hold off. I mean, if you like 1 and 2, for example, we can give you the blue or whatever, blue, yellow, whatever you want. And I guess what I'd love to know is, if you want to zero in on 1 and 2, do you all like the tagline? Do you not like the tagline? And then give us, we can come back in June if you don't want to do that.
How about number 7? It's got a little green in it, but it's mostly blue, and then there's a sunset, no,
That's a lot.
the water, it's too much. I like it, but whatever.
A lot going on there.
It's all just big story. We got no peer, we should have a peer.
Hand in hand out for, yeah.
Let's not be here for an hour.
No, we're not gonna meet for an hour. So.
It seems that
Consensus?
there's some consensus between 1 and 2.
But no green.
Well,
No.
I guess let's start with that.
With a lighter blue perhaps, with the alternatives.
A lighter blue
Bring
instead
it
of the.
back with other colors.
Number 1.
Instead of the green.
If
And they
that's
both
the
have
consensus,
taglines,
bring it
so
up.
we're gonna defer this to you.
No, they don't, no, this is.
How
the
about one
tagline.
with light blue instead of green?
There you see. So this is the main. This is the tagline.
That works.
Cleaner.
I like the color of those.
All right. Good.
So should we just bring back 1 and 2?
Bring it back in June? or
I
both?
say, yeah, so I guess I'll make a motion. Let's go with 1 and 2 as is, and an option with replacing the green with a light blue and see what it looks like.
I'll second that.
All right,
With that.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We're not gonna do a roll call.
No.
All right, that's the motion.
Yeah.
All right.
No,
All right, so then,
no, you have to.
You have to do the roll call.
legally, we have to do.
Because Michelle is wondering by telling.
With when you're doing a motion, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, Keldorf,
oh my goodness.
Montero,
Yes.
Seaman,
Yes.
Suarez,
Yes.
Puff,
Yes.
Carney,
Yes.
Aristam,
Yes.
Alderovich,
Yes.
Segura,
Yes.
Kaji.
Yes.
Allen
Yes.
and Ramirez.
Yes.
Thanks. Okay, updates, Bronson, updates from community feedback on the trust.
Yeah, just really quickly, just informational, Colleen does a very effective job and she got the news out, that we formed our trust, we've been getting some calls from developers. CTY Housing was one, they're not a developer per se, but they're consulting with a developer, who was interested in Hawthorne and Inglewood. And we subsequently connected them to the city staffs there. They wanted to know things about like their local climate for affordable housing, where to build if they were to be interested in some sites, and those types of questions. So we had a great conversation with the city and CTY on Hawthorne Inglewood with the city staff. We've also gotten approached by just property owners who are interested in converting. They might have like a commercial site that they want to maybe convert into affordable housing and how to do that. And so, so there's just been some interest, and we can, do this in a future discussion, but like how should we, I think this is part of like, how should we create a pipeline for us of projects to consider? We can do NOFAs, maybe we can do city specific RFPs, like if the city has, like for Hawthorne, for instance, had that site that they wanted to develop, if there's more like that, we can help facilitate that. And any other ideas that you all have. So just wanted to start getting you guys thinking about that, and then maybe in a future meeting, providing staff with some direction on how you'd like to proceed with that. That's it.
Right. That ties back into what are our priorities, right? I mean, because we don't want to get out in front of it and say, oh yeah, come on down, unless we understand what the priorities may be for the trust. It's just an observation.
A question, so if developers are contacting you and a specific site within a city, I'm assuming you're connecting them with the city to have that discussion before it gets to this board.
Yes, yes.
Mm-hmm. So, and the look ahead in the future agenda items, one of the things that that is of concern to me is, do we have a really definite process of when we start spending our money? Is it what if a city hears from a developer and they haven't approved the project, but they want us to do a little bit of investigation? I would personally like some guidelines as to how you want to handle that, because is that the city asking us to do something so we can do it, or are we waiting for city approval, which is what we said? So I think that's something we ought to discuss and think about, is where do we spend our money, and where do we not, where do we say to the developer, you have to get the city to send us something because we're not going to do it. And I want that to be very well understood by us and the cities. So that's a future item that I'd like to discuss. And then also, I think we can brainstorm priorities and talk about a strategic plan, a work program at the June board meeting is what we thought we would do. One of the things, as I said, if we can come up with priorities and the things, and we'll talk about it, but zeroing in on program after program and figuring out how they work, and and what our priorities are in the South Bay. The other thing that I've mentioned to some of you is that I think we should consider doing an inventory of our vacancies. What do we actually have here? What's our stock? What's available? And what are some of the even the commute patterns? Let's understand who's coming and who's going and what we need. And I think that'll help maybe with the legislation, but it'll also help us maybe say to developers, this is what we're looking for when you go to cities. That's, if you want to come to us, we know Redondo Beach wants, something, and we can say what they want. So, and then I was also thinking that we could also do a question and answer sheet for cities. What are you supposed to say when the developer comes to your city? So we can also be that kind of resource for some of our cities. And then Nina brought in something that came up during the whole discussion of whether to join the trust, and that is, what can we do to help cities do the certification? And when there is a low income, a building that the people need to be certified annually, should we maybe centralize that for the South Bay and save cities a lot of money? Even if we charge cities a little money, and we might end up not being able to use our CASA money, so we could maybe even charge a little, but we might be able to save them money in the long run. So those are all things that I want to put on the table, and we all have to figure out how we're going to prioritize those. And I'm sure Ronson has 10 more than I do. So here we go. Oh, and the last thing I wanted to mention is I have down here the La Casa calendar, because I think we should understand what their calendar is, how they're going to start issuing money, and when they do a NOFA and what they're planning for their year, so that we have a good idea of what our parent agency is figuring out.
Madam, Jack is correct, every single point she mentioned there, because, for example, we have some other property that probably we're gonna put on, not on the market, but the request for proposal next year, right? But we wanna put the RFP out and developer have to apply, right? So then if we choose one of the developers out of, say, 12, then it's what we already have vet the project, we already have, say, if they compatible with our city, then maybe they should be contact the trust, right? It's not them they contact the trust and then go to the cities, because we would have to have almost a shovel-ready project in a sense, or approved by city council, because like this one was approved by us by vote before it move forward. So it has to be that process, right? And the other one that I think is difficult for some of the cities, if you don't have a housing department, that is where that certification becomes complicated. Because I have to tell you, for 20 years, I was a housing, low-income housing with HUD. Every year I would have to ask for income. I would have to file those reports to the county, to the HUD, for to make sure. And believe it or not, I think I only raised rent for the 20 years 3 times only, basis on that MRI in the low income. Every year you would have to look at it. So I know how these things operate, but we have to be clear what our goals are, what projects we're going to do. So I agree with Steven, I agree with Jackie that we have to figure it out. Because like I might tell you, home ownership has not worked. Because we tried several times to give people down payment for home ownership, and it has not worked. And so we have to figure it out something else down the pipe.
Madam Chair, so I'd just like to reiterate kind of what Alex said, we don't want it to be, I would offer up, we don't want it to be first in, first out, right? I mean, that's not the intent, right? So, and I mean, Alex, we appreciate you bringing the project forward, but it goes back to the call for projects, what's the priority and all those type of things. And again, I think there's a lot of opportunities. We just don't know what they are yet.
And inventory is good. Do inventory is good, yes. All the cities we should do inventory.
Very exciting stuff. Thank you.
I can just add to, I'm sorry.
Back on.
I met a gentleman and it sparked the topic about how expensive it is to build affordable housing. He had some ideas. He's a South Bay guy, and I would love for him to come to know, either speak to staff about a report to us, or some conversation about how to make it affordable to build affordable housing. Can you give us? Yes. Yeah.
All right. Yes.
I have to bring something because I wasn't here last time, so I apologize. But I belong to the Clean Power Alliance, and I'm on the board and also on the executive committee. And the executive committee meets the third Thursday of the month at 1:30. And usually those meetings goes up to 3:30. So today I had to leave early to be here on time. So yeah, so she's fine. But I would like us to revisit the time, or make it at 3:30 or 4:00 if it's possible. Or another time, so kind of accommodate everyone, right? Because I know some of my colleagues work, right? So I know it is sensitive, but if we can look at that, I would appreciate it very much. And I want to say thank you for giving heart on that vote. And I want to make sure that we will not let you down.
Well, I understand that it was advice of counsel that you did not have a conflict to vote on that, so you voted for it. This is your project, your city.
Yeah, I asked
Yeah,
the council
I
before,
understand that.
that's true, I
understand
get out of the room, so you guys can measure up.
Yeah, we're right.
With 3:30 work.
3:30 work, Alex?
3:30 will work, yes.
Okay. Okay, right. Meeting adjourned.